What's up? My name's Alea. Welcome to a new reading vlog. In this video, I read 4 books. I got part of the way through 3 more. We did a little bit of crafting and cooking, and we went on some outdoor adventures, and I just had a generally lovely time. So without any further ado, let's roll the footage. Hello, good morning. I have a reading update for you. So the other day I started a new book, and it's called The Marmalade Diaries by Aitken. And this is not something that was originally on my TBR, but my coworker Richie told me about it, and I thought it sounded really, really interesting. So it's a memoir about this guy named Ben, and he's in his early 30s, and he lives in London. And this takes place right at the beginning of 2020, and so it's before COVID has hit and everything. And it's basically about Ben trying to find like a cheap place to live in London. And he finds this ad for a room for rent. And so he accepts it and he goes through with it and everything. And so it turns out there's kind of a catch. So the room is a room in this big house that's owned by this 85-year-old widow named Winnie. And basically she says, okay, you can live in this room in my house for cheap. And, you know, you basically just have to help me with stuff around the house. And so he agrees and he moves in with Winnie. And then right after he moves in with Winnie, the pandemic hits really hard and they're stuck in lockdown together for like many, many months. So this is basically the diary entries of Ben's experience living with this 85-year-old widowed lady. And it's about all of the stories that she tells him about her life and her kids. And it's also about her grief because she's still really grieving the loss of her husband Henry, who she was married to for a really long time. And it's about Ben kind of getting used to all of the funny things that Winnie does and like her weird habits that she has and things, and kind of realizing that like she's a really sweet lady but she's going through a lot of stuff, and just basically about the two of them trying to survive the pandemic and find something to do during lockdown without driving each other crazy. And it's just really interesting and funny. Winnie is so hilarious. Ben is also really snarky and funny, and it has like this really good British humor in it that I really enjoy. And I like it because it's written, you know, as a diary, so every single day there's a different entry. So it has like the date, and then there's like a couple paragraphs of whatever happened that day, and then it goes on to the next day. So the whole thing is kind of written in like little vignette style chunks, which I really like. And then there's also a few pages that are in italics that are about like Winnie's childhood. So like this one's from 1954, and it's about like Winnie and her mom. But anyways, and it's called The Marmalade Diaries because Winnie has marmalade and toast every single morning for breakfast, and that's like a big part of the story. So anyways, I'm really, really enjoying this so far. I just really needed something different, and I feel like I don't usually read a lot of nonfiction, but whenever I do, I really enjoy it. So anyways, I'm kind of getting back into nonfiction at the moment. But anyways, I'm gonna go to work, and I will talk to you later. So yesterday at work, we got a copy of The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead in, and everybody's been screaming about this on booktube. So I thought while I was working, I would just pick it up and read a couple pages and see what all the booktube girlies are screaming about. And you know what? I read 6 pages and I got sucked in to the story so hard that I had to buy the copy that we had. So now I have a copy of this, and I'm like 10 pages in, but it's actually super, super good. So we're following this lady, and I think her name is Shay, and she is basically married to this guy, and she's kind of just his housewife, and she's hanging out by the pool one day listening to this true crime podcast that she really likes. And the podcast is run by this guy that she went to college with years ago. And so she's listening to him talk about these unsolved murders one day, and he talks about this new case that's just happened, and turns out the woman who got murdered in this case is her best friend from college, and the police are not sure if it was a suicide or if it was murder. And so this guy on the podcast is kind of talking about her death and the circumstances of her death and such, and our main character Shay is like, oh my god, something is wrong. Like, we had a friend in college who was also in our friend group who died in like a really similar way, and we thought that she committed suicide, and maybe she didn't, and maybe there's like a murderer going around killing these people that I know. And anyways, so that's how the story starts off, and it's really, really good, really interesting, and all of that happens in like the first 6 pages, and then you're like, well shit, I need to know what happened to her friend who died. And so anyways, now I'm just like in it. And also, I'm going book shopping today because it's my birthday weekend, and so Peyton and I are going to Spokane to go to this really cool indie bookstore. And so I'm gonna do a whole separate like come book shopping with me video, and that's gonna go up before this video, so I'll leave that linked in the description below. And then also, after we go book shopping, we're probably gonna go like run around and go to some other places, so I'll try to take you along for the like post book shopping adventures, so you guys can see what's going on. And then when I get back, hopefully we can do some more reading. So that's the plan for the day, and I will catch you later. Hello, it's been a productive week. I've been cleaning the house, doing laundry, working a night shift because we had an author event going on. I read a whole book. I started finger knitting a blanket, which I'll show you in a second. We've just had a lot of things going on. So, first of all, I want to talk to you about this, which is a graphic novel that I read this week, and it's called Feelings, A Story in Seasons by Manjeet Thap. So this was recommended by Alea from Alice in Pages, and I've been really loving her stuff and binge watching all her videos lately, and this is one that she picked up randomly in a vlog, and I found it at the bookstore the other day, and I was like, well, let's just see what's up and see if I like it. And I really, really enjoyed it. The art style is absolutely stunning, and it was actually a lot more like deep than I thought it was going to be, and I actually ended up taking notes on my bookmark, which I never ever do. But it's really interesting, and it's about this woman who is basically like kind of feeling like her energy levels are changing during different seasons, and she's working this day job that it seems like she doesn't really like, and she's a really creative person, so every evening she comes home and is like painting in her room and trying to make it as an artist. And I felt like that was really relatable and interesting and fun, and I felt like this was a really quiet story, but it was also really impactful. So I read all of this in a day, and I read half of it while I was at work, to be honest, because I was on an evening shift and it was slow. So I was reading this and it was really good. So I finished that, and then I also have a stack of books that I'm like kind of mood reading through this week. So The Last Housewives, which I'm still right at the beginning of, have no more thoughts to share on that. And then I also have And Then I Woke Up, which is a horror novella that I just picked up at the bookstore the other day, and I've been wanting to get to this for a while and I just have not gotten to it yet, so that's on the TBR. And then I also just started House Cat Trouble by Mason Dickerson, which is a really, really adorable middle grade graphic novel about this house cat, and his name is Buster, and his owner goes on vacation, and while she's gone, these little spirits like invade the house and attack him, and these other street cats have to like bust in and save him and try to teach him how to get rid of the spirits in his house. And it's really, really cute. The art style is beautiful, and the main cat, Buster, is a kitten, and so he's kind of like figuring out how to fight these spirits, and he's baby, like he doesn't know what's going on, and the street cats are like, bro, like you need to get it together and like save your house, basically. It's just really fun, and it's about the cats and like their friendship, and the whole story is from the cat's point of view, and it's just really good and tender, and I like it a lot. And then I'm also about to finish the Marmalade Diaries by Ben Aitken, and I know I talked to you guys about this earlier. This is a really mundane beautiful story. And as the inner flap says, it's a book about grief, family, friendship, loneliness, love, lockdown, and marmalade. And I couldn't have said it any better myself. This is slow, but it's heartwarming, and it's sad, and it's impactful, and it's kind of just like taken me on this ride. And so I'm excited to see where we end up by the end, but I'm still really enjoying this one as well. And then also, Peyton and I went grocery shopping today, and then we went to Goodwill, and I found this book by Lorraine Heath called Pleasures of a Notorious Gentleman. And so I might also start reading this tonight because I'm kind of in the mood for historical romance because I haven't read one in a while. So anyways, those are the books that are on the TBR for like the last few days of this vlog. I've also been considering picking up the audiobook for I'm Glad My Mom Died because everybody's been screaming about it and I just want to know what's up, and the audiobook is on Scribd. So I've been thinking about finishing these, or at least trying to, seeing how much I can get through, and then maybe listening to that audiobook. But first, I want to show you the blanket that I've started today because it's really cool, and it doesn't look like much yet, but I promise it is going to be a blanket. And also I'm going to leave the link to the instructional video I've been watching on YouTube down below because I found this lady who does like crochet and stuff on her channel, but she came up with this like pattern kind of for how to finger knit a blanket, so you don't need like crochet needles or any experience or anything. And so you basically just take this big chunky yarn and like weave it together with your fingers. And I saw that a while ago and was like, that is the craft for me. Like, I don't know how to knit and I don't know how to crochet, but I do have fingers and I feel like this craft is on my level. So I kind of saved the video and then I got the yarn for it like last winter and then just was too busy to ever make the blanket. And so I was like, yo, I'm like in my fall mood, I'm buying sweaters, I want to knit this blanket, like let's go. So anyways, we're getting it going and I actually feel like I'm getting it figured out. So let's go take a look at that. Okay, so this is my blanket so far. I know it just looks like a big fluffy strip right now, but it's starting to like show the actual pattern and like the chain links, if you can see that. It's also hard to tell because the fabric's so dark, but basically you take this really chunky yarn. This is another ball that I have that's in white because I think I'm going to do like black, white, and it's going to be like pretty long. But anyway, you take this really chunky yarn and you like weave it together with your fingers and just kind of like put it through like this and then make a new loop. And so it's really just a bunch of like interconnected loops, which is really cool. So it's actually pretty easy and I've been picking it up pretty fast. But that's kind of my like beginning of fall craft project that I got going on here. I'm in the process of making an extravagant veggie bagel for lunch. This is the beginning. I'll show you when it's done. But while we're doing that, I wanted to talk to you about the reading updates. So I know I told you I was going to start Pleasures of a Notorious Gentleman last night, but I ended up going down this whole like Lorraine Heath research rabbit hole, and I was looking at all of her series and like what the recommended reading order is and stuff. And so after doing that, I really wanted to read book 1 in this series, and so I started it on Scribd on audio last night, and it's called Passions of a Wicked Earl, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's about 6 hours long, and I listened to like 2 hours of it last night. But anyway, so we follow this guy, and he is the oldest son of 3, but when he was 5, his dad died, and then his mom remarried this other rich guy and had a 3rd son with him. So he kind of like inherited this crumbling estate, and his dad who died was in a lot of debt, so he also inherited that debt, so he's not doing so well financially. And so when he was young, his family kind of like arranged this marriage for him with this other family, and they said, okay, the firstborn daughter of this other rich aristocratic guy is going to marry our son Morgan. And so that was the deal. And then this all happened before the daughter was even born. So then once she's born, they kind of like grew up together, but it's kind of weird because Morgan has this younger brother named Stephen, and our main heroine, her name's Claire. Claire and Stephen were like best friends growing up, and then Morgan, the guy that she's arranged to marry, is like 8 years older than her, and he kind of just like didn't play with the other kids because he was always the older one, and he was you know, busy with this whole financial situation that was bad that he had inherited and so on and so forth. So he and Claire really don't know each other at all. And then she makes this dumb mistake on their wedding night, and he just feels totally betrayed, and so he basically exiles her to this house, and then they don't see each other for 3 years. And so the book starts, and Claire has come to where he's living in London, and he hasn't seen her in 3 years, and he's really mad at her, and he feels totally betrayed by her. And she shows up because she has a favor to ask him, and the story kind of goes from there. So this is an interesting one because they're already married, but they don't really know each other, and they've been estranged for many years, and there's a lot of like hurt feelings between them. And also he's kind of like, I don't know, he's kind of aggressive, and he kind of goes off the handle and like throws these fits and gets really mad about stuff. And so I'm not sure how I feel about him. I feel like we're supposed to kind of sympathize with him in some ways, and in some ways I kind of do. Like, I get that he's feeling like hurt and betrayed by her and stuff, but also he kind of just like flew off the handle 3 years ago, and I don't think that was necessary. It's kind of like a miscommunication thing going on. But anyways, so I'm enjoying it so far. We'll see where it goes. It has made me really interested to read this one though, because this one is about the middle brother Stephen and like his romance, and then book 3 in the trilogy is about the youngest brother Ainsley. So I feel like I'm in it with the characters now, and I'm intrigued. And it's amazing how I went from knowing nothing about Lorraine's Heath books to going to Goodwill one day, and then now I'm like in it with this trilogy now. So anyway, that's what's happening. I'm gonna finish my bagel, and then I'll probably update you when I've listened to some more of the audiobook. Hey. So, yesterday I just woke up filled to the brim with the autumnal spirit, and I kind of went crazy, and I turned into Halloween Martha Stewart on crack, and I went and decorated the whole house for Halloween. I was putting up lights, and I reorganized my whole bookshelf. I threw chicken Alfredo in the crock pot and made that. I did the dishes, I did the laundry, I cleaned the bathroom. I just did the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. And I filmed a bunch of that yesterday, so let's roll the montage. So after I did all the Halloween decorating, I also started 2 more books. So I started What We Fed to the Manticore and High Times in Low Parliament. So What We Fed to the Manticore is a short story collection that just came out in early September, and each story is told from a different perspective of various animals. So the first story was from the perspective of a donkey, and then the second one was from a tiger's perspective. And so far it's really, really good. I really like the writing style. It's very like quick and concise, but the stories are also like sad and emotionally impactful, and the stories are kind of about like environmentalism and conservation and identity and family and that kind of stuff. But it's cool because it's from an animal's perspective, so you're getting these vibes from animals instead of people, which I think is really cool. But in the stories, the animals also talk, and they can talk to the people, and the people understand them, which is really cool. So there's also kind of this human-animal connection theme going on as well. And so in the third story, we're following a vulture, and I think that one was my favorite so far because I never thought that I would like be able to empathize with the vulture. And I thought that was really interesting, and the vulture's perspective on like how it's their duty to eat other animals so that those animals' spirits can like move on to the afterlife and they're not just like stuck on Earth. Some of them had this power where if they ate the flesh of an animal, they could see that animal's memories and like learn how they died. And I thought that was just a really, really cool story and a really cool take on the idea of like vultures as scavengers. And it kind of made it like a magical realism thing, and I thought it was really cool. So I think that one's my favorite so far. And so I think there's like 5 or 6 more in here that I haven't read yet. So I really want to see if I can finish this in this vlog because I'm really enjoying it. And then I also started High Times in Low Parliament, which I just randomly picked up from the library and have heard nothing about it. But so far I'm really enjoying it. It's a tour novella and it's set in this like fantastical version of London, and it's giving like Disenchantment vibes if you've seen that cartoon on Netflix. This is really similar to that, which I really like. So we follow this scribe named Lana, and she is very flirtatious, and she's also a lesbian. So she's like running around flirting with all these women in this little village, and her family kind of runs this bakery, but she's not really involved in it because that's not really her vibe. And so she basically hangs out in these pubs and works as a scribe and writes like fancy letters for people and things like that. And so one day this girl comes to her and wants her to write a response to this royal summons that she gets. And Lana's like, okay, fine, only because you're cute. And so she writes this response to this girl's summons that she got. And so Lana goes and delivers it for her. And the girl can't do it herself because she's a fellow scribe and she got injured somehow and like broke her writing hand. And so Lana's like, okay, cool, whatever. I'll take this little letter to the fairies for you as a favor. And so Lana does that, and the fairies are really pissed because apparently this girl who Lana wrote the letter for was supposed to be sent off to this place called Low Parliament. And now she can't go because she broke her writing hand. And so they're like, oh, you're a scribe? Well, guess what's this? You get to go in her place. And Lana's like, bro, I'm not involved. And they're like, sucks to suck. You're going to Low Parliament. And so she has to go home and pack her stuff, and she gets shipped off to Low Parliament. So Low Parliament is basically this place that is like where the government kind of like holds court. And so the Parliament's job is to like vote on these different things, because in this world there's fairies and there's humans and there's these different magical creatures and there's castles and things like that. It's very fantastical, very whimsical. But apparently in the past, the humans used to basically have wars every single spring, and they would kill other humans, but they would also like kill all the fairies and burn the forests, and they were just super destructive. So the fairies were like, yo, we're sick of this shit. So you guys have to come to Parliament and you have to send representatives there, and you guys have to work out your human differences with each other about like border disputes and stuff like that. So then you don't have to have these ugly wars and like massacre everyone and everything around you. And so in Low Parliament, there's scribes who are supposed to like write down everything that happens. And then there's also these other duties. There's like pages and deputies and those kinds of things. And so they're all basically stuck in this big like stone castle kind of building. And the fairies basically say, okay, if you guys can't work out your differences in Parliament and figure your government out, then we're gonna basically have the waves from the sea that's right next to this building come up and drown all of you, and then we're going to start fresh because you guys need to get it together. And so basically there's this issue going on in Parliament when Lana arrives, because all of the votes lately have been hung, which basically means that like they're at an impasse, like they couldn't decide yes or no on various topics. And so when Parliament is hung, that means that they're closer and closer to getting drowned. And so things are really bad in Parliament when Lana shows up, and she's like, well, this kind of sucks, but let's make the best of it. And so she ends up befriending this fairy named Bugbite, who is kind of like the fairy who watches over the scribes. And in this world, the fairies are basically like in charge, and they're kind of like holding the humans hostage and forcing them to have a government and work out their issues. So the fairies like bite them and pinch them and are really annoying and not very nice and super grumpy all the time. But Lana befriends Bugbite, this fairy. And so she and Bugbite are basically like, yo, this sucks. So let's make the best of it. And so they end up like doing a lot of shrooms, because Bugbite like grows her own hallucinogenic shrooms. Wouldn't you know? So they're just like vibing, doing shrooms, and Lana like snuck in some booze, and they also use yeast as like almost like a drug to like calm everybody down. And so they're kind of like doing drugs, so it's a little bit like whimsical and hallucinogenic in that way, which is really cool. So basically the whole story is about Lana and Bugbite and what's going on with Parliament, and Lana's kind of like figuring out what all this Parliament stuff means and all of that. It's really interesting, actually. But I really love the friendship element in this. And also, there's no men in this story. It's all women. So all the scribes are women, everybody in the government is a woman, the fairies are all women, but there's still, like, you know, strife and war and conflicts between the fairies and the humans, and it's really interesting and magical and whimsical and fun. And I really like the, like, hallucinogenic element of this story. Like, the cover really sums it up with all these little, like, magic mushrooms and stuff. And at one point Wanda starts hallucinating these little, like, horned snails that are on the cover, which I think is really cool. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far. Also, I've been following along with the audiobook, and I highly recommend the audiobook because the narrator's voice is, like, British but also really, like, magical, and she really brings the story to life, and I really like that as well. So these are the two books that I started, and so far I'm loving them both, which is fantastic. So I want to try and finish both of these in this vlog. I'm like over halfway through this one and almost halfway through What We Fed to the Manticore. So I want to finish these two. And then I also finished up Passions of a Wicked Earl by Lorraine Heath last night. And oh my god, I was listening to the audiobook of that and I was like, okay, cool, I have like an hour left, let's just bust through this. No, like, the romance girlies were not messing around when they said that Lorraine Heath packs a punch with her endings and has a bunch of twists, because honestly, I am not, like, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually okay after that ending, because there was like 4 or 5 big things that happened right at the end, like boom, boom, boom. And oh my god, at one point I had to put it down like half an hour before the end of the book, and I had to go to my boyfriend and be like, yo, I need a hug because I'm not okay, like, my book is really sad. And also, I didn't look at trigger warnings before I read this book, which is probably my bad, but trigger warnings for miscarriage and attempted murder and a lot of miscommunication. If that's something that's irritating to you, you probably won't like this book. But I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I think that it did end up having a happy ending, which was good. But oh my god, Lorraine Heath really, like, pulled it out there at the end. And she had a lot of twists that I didn't see coming. Like, I figured there was going to be something going on with the mistress. So I don't think I talked about this part before, but in this book we have the two main characters are Claire and then Morgan Westcliff. Everybody just calls him Westcliff, and he's the oldest of the 3 brothers. And so this one's about their romance, but I know I told you about how they were married and then they had a big miscommunication thing going on, and so Westcliff exiled Claire to his country estate and basically made her run the estate by herself, and then he moved to London and they've been totally estranged since their marriage. But while he was in London, he was basically sleeping around with half of the women in London, and so she went to London to ask him for a favor because her younger sister needed to go to London and have a place to stay so that she could have her time, she could have her season where she meets men and finds somebody to marry. So she doesn't have to marry this creepy old man that her dad wants her to marry. And so when Claire goes to London, she also has this secondary agenda of, like, trying to rein him in because all of her girlfriends are like, sis, your husband is out of line and you need to go figure it out with him because this man is a mess and we're sick of his shit. And so she's like, okay, fine, whatever. And so he has slept with a lot of women, obviously, but he's basically taken up with this mistress named Anne. And oh man, it really hit the fan with this mistress at the end. What a gal she was, oh lord. So that was interesting. And then the relationship between Claire and Westcliff was really interesting at the end. Yeah, it was something. So now I'm a little bit nervous to read book 2 in the series because I don't know what's going to happen. And also I think the second brother, Stephen, is probably my least favorite of the 3 brothers. But I am still interested to carry on and see what happens with him because I want to see who he ends up with because I think that's going to be really interesting. But I am a little nervous because I'm like, oh shit, is this ending going to, like, emotionally destroy me like book 1 did, or is this going to be a little more chill? There's really no telling with Lorraine Heath. It sounds like she really does pack a punch at the end. Like, sis did not come to play. But anyways, so I am going to finish up these 2 and then also the Marmalade Diaries, and then we're going to wrap up this vlog. So I'm going to go read. Talk to you later. I want to show you the progress that I've been making on my blanket. So let's go take a look at that. Okay, so this is the blanket so far. I've made a lot of progress since I showed you last. And I decided to throw a little teal in there just for a little bit of spice because I saw it at the store and it was really pretty. So we're doing black, white, teal, black, white, teal, black is going to be the pattern. And then my next one is the big white yarn ball over there. That's going to be the next row. And it's coming along really, really nicely. The stitches are kind of coming along. They got tighter as I went because I kind of got better at doing it. But I'm really liking how it's turning out so far, and it's really soft and squishy too. It's really nice. It's really thick material. So yeah, that's where we're at with the crafting. Hello, so Peyton and I are back from our adventure through the Arboretum. It was really, really pretty, and they had pumpkins and sunflowers, and it was so fun. And then when we got back, we made some quiche, and I did some more reading, and I finished 2 books. So I just finished High Times and Low Parliament, and this one was really, really good. This just felt like a fun romp through a fictional parliament, and it had fairies and sapphic love and friendship and whimsy and hallucinogenic shrooms, and it was such a fun time and I loved it. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. It was lovely. The audiobook was also really wonderful. Fun and fresh time. Also, I don't know why the Goodreads reviews for this are so negative because it was good, so sorry Goodreads, but you're wrong. Sucks to suck. And I also finished The Marmalade Diaries by Ben Aitken. So this kind of had a sadder ending, but I'm not mad about it because it felt really genuine and really human, and I liked that a lot, and it was interesting to see what happened with Ben and Winnie and Winnie's family and her kids, and just, you know, she was talking a lot about getting old and, you know, her health and stuff like that, but there was also a quote that I wanted to read to you guys in here that I really enjoyed that was closer to the end. Ben was talking about how just about everything carries some kind of like memory or connection for Winnie because she's lived for so long that she has associations with like everything. So he came home from the grocery store and he put some artichokes on the table, and she immediately had this memory of her and her husband when they'd had artichoke soup one time and like got food poisoning and got really sick. And so she'll see something and just like go off on this story from her earlier years in life, and it's really interesting. And so Ben says, as one goes through life, associations gather and amass at the back of our minds, on the tips of our tongues, where they lie snug and pointless and dormant for days or years, until summoned forth by the sudden appearance of some artichokes on the kitchen table. More time, more memories, life gets thicker as it goes on, it gains texture, weight, matter, and by gaining matter, it matters more. And I thought that was really interesting and beautiful. So anyways, that's my one quote from this that was one of my favorites. There's also a lot of other really good ones in here of their witty banter that I loved. So on the whole, these two were both really, really lovely. I'm also part of the way through House Cat Trouble and What We Fed to the Manticore. I did read a little bit more of this, but I'm not finished with it yet. And I'm also working on The Last Housewife still as well, and I don't think I'm gonna have time to finish these in this vlog because I really need to wrap it up because I need to finish editing it. If you guys didn't know, it takes a very long time to edit vlogs. Like, we're talking like anywhere between 6 and 8 hours or so for these kinds of things. So I am gonna leave it here and finish up those books later on, and hopefully you guys will hear my thoughts in a video later on. But thank you so much for watching. If you got to the end of this video, please leave me a sunflower emoji in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching, thank you for caring, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!